Hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining us in today's session on managing stress consciously, presented by Ms. Amita Nandi. Before we begin, my name is Iza, and together with my colleague Yilin, we'll be your moderators for today. First of all, we're just going to go through some quick housekeeping rules. If I can get it on. Right. The participants' audio and video capabilities will be disabled during the webinar. But please go ahead and check that you are muted on your respective devices. Unfortunately, the raise hand reaction will not be attended due to our constraint on time. So if you have any questions regarding today's topic, you can type them in the Q&A box located on the ribbon on the bottom of your screens, which will be addressed at the end of the session. If you have any general questions or queries, Eileen and I are happy to accommodate, so feel free to type them in the chat box. And lastly, for optimal viewing, we recommend selecting the speaker's view located somewhere on the top right of your screen. Before we move on to the main event, I'd first like to introduce our speaker for today, Ms. Amita. Ms. Amita has spent more than 25 years working with executives of all levels on personal, people, and business issues. Her specialist experience is in the area of developmental and high-performance transformation at both personal and organizational levels. She has a proven track record as a global consultant in learning, design, and development of people and culture solutions, facilitator certification, and personal mastery in organizational strategy, and is currently pursuing her PhD in the area of integrative medicine using quantum science. This session will take approximately 45 minutes to an hour. And before I hand the session over to our speaker, let's first of all get started with a short poll. So we've got two questions on your screens now. The first one is, my highest source of stress comes from, and you can choose more than one answer. And the second one is, I have the skills to manage and deal with any stress in my life. So please go ahead and click in on whatever you feel is right for you. And we're just going to give this a couple of minutes before Ms. Amita starts with the presentation. All right. Yeah, I guess that's everybody. Ms. Amita, if you would like.
Okay, thank you, Iza. Thank you, Yilin. And I'm very happy to be here this morning. Welcome, everybody. The topic is a very, I would say, I'm not sure if you agree with me, this is really a rather important topic for us to discuss today, especially with the circumstances that we are going through. So I hope in the next couple of minutes, you will have an idea and pick up maybe some tools, although today is just meant to be a preview to our two-day program. So the session is titled Managing Stress Consciously, and it is on purpose that we use the word consciously because stress is part of life, right? And it is deemed to be one of the greatest reasons why people suffer today. If you ask a doctor, he will say the source of every disease is actually originates with stress or, improper management of stress. Okay, so let me first give you a glimpse of what the 2 days is going to look like, right? So those of you who are interested can further either, call me, I can give you a deeper description of what we're going to cover, or you could speak to your SHRDC, salespeople or officers. So the 2-day coverage, what we will do, first of all, is, of course, to talk about stress. And a lot of this I will be covering today. to really get an understanding of what stress is about. And does stress have to always be bad? Is there something known as good stress? What do we do when we are in a stress mode, right? The fight or flight, response, as some of you may already know. Recognizing our sources of stress, and some of the questions that were asked during the poll just now would give you an idea, and we will process that in a bit. The impact of long-term stress, the effects it can have on our lives, on our work, on our relationships, and also the costs. It really costs a lot in terms of physical health, in terms of the medication, in terms of therapy. So what are the costs of this? We will be talking a little bit about mental health and well-being at work. This is fast becoming a huge topic today that many people are grappling with, not sure what exactly it means, and to what extent is it serious, or is it a medical condition? Is it something that can be just overcome just by having some activities at work like team building and stuff like that? So what exactly is mental health? And of course, stress medicine and our society today. And the problem with stress is today it is affecting our children, right? Things like ADHD, things like type 2 diabetes, etc., etc. It's causing a strain across all different ages as well. So that's an overview of stress and what it can do. The second topic is a deep dive into ourselves, actually, right? So this is a log. We are doing an audit of ourselves. What stresses me? What are some habits and lifestyle patterns that are maybe, really, putting us in a situation where we have lost control of our lives, of our work, and the quality of work and our performance. So an examination of that. Could it be that sometimes we have self-limiting beliefs, right? Do we tell ourselves the words that we speak to ourselves, or the sounds and the vision and the visuals that we have in our mind, are they limiting us in our progress or in our performance? Then we look at things like anxiety, resentments. We may have certain resentments, and some of us may have deeply buried, issues with the way we were brought up, our conditioning, somebody in our past that continues to, bring angst and resentment in our lives. So we look at that. What have I done to overcome stress? So an examination of that, what has worked for you. Identifying the impact and effects of stress in your life. There'll be time for reflection, recognizing signs and symptoms. Are we even aware when we are undergoing pressure and stress that we behave in a certain way, we think in a certain way? So coming to terms with that. Getting off the hamster wheel. Now we know that all of us are very busy and we're constantly on this hamster wheel. Sometimes it's necessary that we just jump off that wheel and take a break and pause and reevaluate. Yeah, so how would that look like for us? Finding meaning and purpose. So again, if we had a goal, if we had purpose in what we did, if we had meaning behind what we are doing, probably the stress may not be as negatively, it doesn't have to be viewed so negatively, right? Because we know that that effort that we are putting into that work is eventually taking us to a place that we want to go, because it's going to give us a better sense of fulfillment in life. Then looking at our mental makeups, yeah, do we see the world as the glass half empty or half full? And looking at the concept of the growth mindset, which is popularized by Carol Dweck. What exactly is the growth mindset? So that would be part 2. And then, okay, just give me a minute. I have frozen. Okay. So the third part of the 2-day program would be a self-management toolkit. This will be looking at science. It'll be looking at new research and new ideas that have come to the fore and looking at alternative modalities rather than, you know, popping pills and addictions and things like that. Concepts like CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, an approach to understanding ourselves better, our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. Looking at neuroscience, what happens in our brain, you know, our circuitry, and, you know, how our brain sort of wires and fires together when stress happens. Looking at disease, and I'm not sure whether you know that dis-ease or disease actually comes from two words. When the body is at ease and everything is going fine, there is no stress, or you're managing stress well. But when there is a dis-ease, when you're not easy, right, and that's where things go haywire. And we look at how that happens and how nutrition also plays a part in this whole puzzle. We look at a concept called mind-body medicine. I'm sure many of you already condone and know about this. We will look at vibrational and quantum medicine, which is also what my area of study is right now, using quantum energy in order to create better vibrations for us, you know, so that we are able to manage life, manage stress better. And an interesting concept called Ho'oponopono, which is a very ancient Hawaiian healing technique. Very simple, just 4 words, and how it can actually, you know, rewire how we look at stuff, and, you know, how we can manage and deal with stress so far. Right, now, could I just get maybe an indication, because I don't see the chat at the moment. Yeah, can I just get an indication that everything is okay so far? Just give me a Y for yes, that I can proceed. Can I just have the alphabet Y? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Yeah, for a while I felt I was speaking to myself. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to proceed, and let's dive into the topic. So, right, now I'm not sure whether this picture is familiar. How many of you can relate to this? Let's have a look at what you have to say. What is stress for you? Give me a quick definition, in your opinion. What's your definition of stress? I'm just going to pause here for a minute. What is stress for you? Thanks, Eileen, for that question. Sudden increase in anxiousness. Yes. Liu, thank you for that. Jun Yang, thank you for that one. Let's have a look. Sudden uncontrollable situation. Muhammad Farid, terima kasih. Yes. Restlessness, Agnes, thank you. Shafira, a situation that is unbearable. Nice one. Yeah, let's have a few more, just to see how this sits with you. Yeah, cold sweats and a racing heartbeat. Isa, thank you. Annoying, repeating problem. Yeah, Ikwan. The ground is giving way. You're right. Yeah, you feel like, you know, the earth is going to swallow you. That you're unstable, right? That you're feeling a little unsettled. Okay, so thank you so much for that. And you're absolutely right. So what I've done is I have gone and got a definition from the dictionary, and this is what it says. Stress is a physical, mental, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension. So it's really quite simple. It's exactly what you have said, right? A situation happening within you, in your mind, or a situation that is happening externally, Shafira, and this is unbearable for you, right? It's unbearable for whatever reason, okay? It's creating some kind of mental tension for you, because maybe your plate is full and you've just got new work that is being thrown at you, right? You're already fighting with time and with priorities, but someone has just expected, maybe a boss or somebody of a superior position has given you additional, yeah, and Jamal says feeling like a zombie. Yeah. Okay, so putting undue pressure on you and undue tension on you until you feel restless, you feel that you cannot handle that situation, and it is affecting you mentally, physically, emotionally, and in many other ways as well. So this is what stress is, and I think it's important that we take note of this meaning, because this is something that when we are put under pressure, we need to recognize, because if we don't, we are not going to be able to manage it. We're just going to react, and it may be detrimental to ourselves when we react without processing and without dealing with it positively. So, okay, so just leave that. Yeah, Shock Cat, thank you for that. Overthinking, yeah, stress causes a lot of overthinking. You can't sleep, insomnia, sleep disorders, the way you manage relationships, maybe you're fiery and feisty because you're constantly thinking, no space to, take a breath, no space to maybe process information, etc. Thank you. Okay, so sorry. So let's understand the science behind stress. I'm not sure whether you have heard of these chemicals in our body. Whenever the brain detects a stressor, so let's say you're walking, you're going for your evening jog or something like that, and then you have a fierce dog, pursuing you and running after you or whatever. So immediately, the body prepares to react to that situation, because we are put in a threatened environment. Okay, so the brain detects the stressor, because now we are beginning to get all worked up, and we are trying to prepare to deal with that particular situation. So it's a very simple example, and I'm sure all of us have been under such situations. It may not be a dog chasing you, but it could be other things that happen at work, happen at, in the family. Somebody says certain things, and then, it touches a raw nerve, and, it reminds you of something, or it suddenly triggers a certain behavior or a certain reaction. And our body is great. Our brain is actually fantastic, because it injects and releases these hormones called cortisol and adrenaline. The moment, this is like petrol, yeah? So petrol it's fueling your body. And the reason actually this happens is it helps to increase our blood sugar. It helps to increase our heart rates, and then oxygen fills up in our muscles, and you are now prepared to face the challenge. You are now prepared to face that dog, or you're prepared to face that particular, retort that came from somebody. So your reaction could be one of fighting, right? So you respond and you take on the challenge, or it could be flight, because you realize that no, this particular situation is too much for you to handle at the moment. You don't have the resources, so you take off. So that energy that you have in your system, that is fueled by cortisol and adrenaline, helps you to run away from that situation. Or sometimes we just freeze. We don't react. We don't take any action, because that is the best way you feel at that moment to deal with that particular situation. So this is our brain's way of helping to self-preserve, help us to preserve ourselves. Okay? So this happens when we are in a situation where we are threatened, or we feel that it's a life and death kind of situation. It's a survival situation. And we are naturally, our reptilian brain, naturally jumps up to that situation and helps us deal with it. So you will notice that a lot of times when we are under stress, we are reacting because we have suddenly a power, a temper, or we have a certain fuel or a certain enhanced energy in order for us to react to the situation. I'm using the word react on purpose, because we are not really responding, we are reacting. Okay, responding would be more processing the situation analyzing it, rationalizing it. And for that, you can't just depend on your reptilian brain. You have to depend on your neocortex, your rational brain. You need to depend on your limbic system, you know? So there's a whole brain processing that happens. But in this case, when it is just running away from a situation, it is just one part of that brain that is working. And usually it is just for survival, right? When you're having an argument in the office, it may not be a good idea to just depend on a reptilian brain response, okay? So this is about a situation where you feel threatened and you're under a lot of pressure and you need to react. Now, not all stress needs to be negative. There is something known as eustress. How many of you have heard of this? Yeah, go ahead in your chat boxes and give me a Y if you have heard of eustress, which is actually beneficial stress. Just want to see if this is something that you are familiar with. Okay, Agnes, thank you for that. Okay, so eustress is beneficial stress. So this is maybe similar situation. You have a lot on your plate and there's more work coming, right? You can choose to look at it as something beneficial. You can choose to take a stand that I'm being given this job because although I'm overloaded, right? Perhaps my quality of work is probably going to take less time in order for us to deliver the results, or the outcome could be better, or the outcome could be faster. So you reframe and you look at that same situation, but this time not from reaction, but from response, okay? And this can positively impact you psychologically, physically, and biochemically, right? And interestingly, when the body is undergoing stress, which you have processed and you know that I'm exercising and it's causing me a lot of pressure and it's very painful and this routine is killing me, but at the end of the day you tell yourself that it is for an overall benefit. Yeah, you are entering a competition, or you're going to feel better, or you're going to stop depending on medication, and through exercising you will feel you will be in a better place. Your body actually secretes chemicals, and these are known as happy chemicals, right? Things like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, and I'm sure you've heard of these before. And the body, again, when you're in a happy environment, when you are in a controlled environment, when you're not in a threat or a survival kind of environment, normally, like when you go on holiday, for example, you have these happy chemicals in your system. You're able to smile more, you're able to enjoy every moment, you're in the present, and these chemicals are naturally injected into your system, and you find that your heartbeat is not like erratic. You are very calm, your breathing is calm, and it affects you, your mind, basically your brain, and all of that really affects the whole total system. So the thing here is, I think the lesson here is, we can use this stress positively to deal with our pressures at work, with our pressures at home, for example. Yeah. So the idea is, rather than be in the passenger seat and wait for things to happen, we can actually take charge. We can actually rewire, we can reprogram, and we can reframe ourselves by a series of activities, a series of rituals, a series of programs, words that you use, for example. And we'll look at that. Yeah, how do you change that whole landscape and that whole environment so that we are able to willfully get things like dopamine and endorphin to flow in our system, and thereby react to the situation in a more positive manner, and you being happier in that process. So these are the two phases, if you like, right, of stress. One being reactive and one being responding after analyzing and looking at the value that stress can bring to us. and it has amazing benefits to us in our mind-body equation, as well as the quality of work as well. Okay, so this is what takes us to creating these neural pathways. As we said, we can actually effectively and positively create different pathways in our brain. And I'm sure many of you may have heard of the concept of neuroplasticity. Basically, what it means is that some people say that, oh, I'm sudah tua lah, tak boleh belajar lagi and all that, and that is so not true anymore, right? New research has shown that we are capable of changing our neural pathways, our brain waves, our brain pathways. Yeah. So you can be in a stress situation and say, oh lama, again it's happening. Or you can choose to say, nope, yeah, I know I'm under pressure, but I will take a deep breath and I will deal with this differently. So you can constructively recreate those pathways in your brain that will affect your whole process of dealing with that stress. So you don't have to react like this guy and say, ooh, life is coming to an end. Right. So how you think and how you feel can be actually manipulated. I mean, what I mean by that is you can positively control that. The study of EQ, I think it's another very important pathway to how you deal with people, right? Because a source of stress is also relationships. A big source of stress is how people speak to us, how we communicate with them, how our awareness about ourselves in how we react to others in a variety of situations. So how skilled are we in EQ? Having a goal, having an aspiration, having a meaning and purpose behind what we do. These are some of the interventions or some of the rituals, some of the activities that we can forcefully invent and innovate in our lives so that we have more positive pathways of dealing with a variety of stress situations. Okay. The power of pause, for example, sometimes maybe just making it a point to just tell yourself, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to freeze for a moment. I'm going to pause because I'm going to give my brain waves and my heartbeat a chance to stabilize before I do anything or before I say anything, right? So consciously, very, very consciously taking that pause before you proceed to the next plan of action. Other things could be breathing exercises, and in the program we will be actually talking further and experimenting what happens when you breathe the correct way, how when you take in breath and how do you breathe in and breathe out. This is probably something that we take for granted, okay? But it is not just our regular breathing, it is it is deep breathing, which actually provides more oxygen to the system, etc. And we'll see what that looks like. Exercise definitely creates more endorphins in the system. Also your nutrition, yeah. Are you more a meat person? Are you more a vegetarian kind of person? Are you more a fish person? How balanced is your diet? That's important. Your nutrition plays a huge role in how you feel and the mind-body connection. And I would like to just end off here by saying that everything that happens to us mentally affects our body as well, right? And vice versa. So in this topic on creating neural pathways or new neural pathways, the idea is how do we constructively and consciously pick on activities, routines and rituals that can help us have better control of stress, which is something that we have no choice but to handle in life anyway. And I think we are living in a society where stress levels are just continuing to escalate, continuing to increase. So the faster we are able to manage and deal and cope with our stress consciously, the better off we are, right? To live productive and conscious lives. Okay, so I'm going to get Isa's help to see what our poll results are here in terms of sources of stress. Okay, so we have work stress 50%. 56% comes from personal life. Family stress is 19, special circumstances 13, all of the above 13. I have it under control is 38%. So looks like personal life is the first source of stress, and the next, a very quick next, is work stress. Okay, thank you for that, Isa. So our stress levels, let's look at the next one. Do we have skills? Okay, many of you say that you have good coping skills. 63% of you feel that you have control, and a few of you feel you don't. Thank you for that, Isa. Okay, so these are your top 5 or 6, sources of stress: work, personal life, family, health, and life transition. Life transition essentially is whenever there's a change. You have a new baby, a new job, you need to move to another place, you have reorganization, blah, blah, blah. All that causes a little bit of stress because you're in transition. So, so it looks like for most of us here, personal life is top of the list. And we all know that we are the center of the universe, of our universe at least. So if our source of stress is us, ourselves, it affects everything else around us, right? So it's really critical that we have tools and we have methods of dealing with how we manage the situation, that it doesn't actually have to be so bad. Yeah. So so we need coping skills to help us even at work, which is the second highest. The pressure that comes from the nature of the job, it could be right now, for example, a lot of things, maybe downsizing, doing less, doing more with less, for example, cutting costs here and there. So as a result, we are not hiring, and things like that. So a lot of pressure is continuing, I think, to mount. And we have heard in the news that things are not going to get any better. In fact, we are expecting for things to get worse in our workplaces, economically and otherwise, right? So I think it's an opportune time right now to talk about this topic and really get prepared mentally and physically for how we're going to cope with this, and particularly starting with personal life, I think, right now. Okay. Right. Now, next topic I wanted to just touch on very briefly is mental health. So how would you define mental health, ladies and gentlemen? Right? Are you talking about mental health in your workplaces right now? Is well-being being discussed in your workplaces? Just give me a why for if you are talking about these topics at work, and what does it mean to you? So give me a why, and then give me your definition. If you're not talking about it, say N, just N for no. If you haven't heard about it, is well-being being discussed at your workplace? Yes or no? Okay, Shafira, thank you for that. Agnes, yes. So Shafira and Agnes, Jamaluddin, Nevin, maybe you can give me 1 or 2 words or phrases. What exactly are you, what's happening in your workplaces when you talk about mental health and well-being? What are things you're doing? What are some things that you all are doing? Good to know that a lot of you are saying yes to this. Mindfulness programs for our people, team activities. Okay. Thanks, Agnes, Naveen. Survey on how COVID-19 has affected our working from home. Okay, Jamaluddin, thank you. All right. So many of you are already, it is not a hush-hush thing anymore. We are bringing it to the fore. Mental health does not mean going gila or going crazy or whatever, that we want to keep it under wraps. Yeah, it is a topic that needs to be dealt with, because if you don't deal with stress early enough, if you do not recognize the signs and the symptoms, it can give rise to a condition, a mental health condition or a well-being condition that is already quite pronounced, already quite alarming, and that's going to cost a lot. It is also, it may be too late for in certain situations, right? So you want to address these topics early, and some programs like what you all are doing right now is definitely very helpful. Right. So I have just these 3 facts here to share with you from the World Health Organization. And these are facts on mental health, right? Work is good for mental health, WHO says, but a negative working environment can lead to physical and health problems. So again, I want to ask you, what would you consider a negative work environment? Just a few words in the chat will help. What's a negative, in your opinion, what would be a negative work environment? Said working late, request to stay back and accomplish it. Yeah, yeah. Lack of motivation and morale. Yeah, fantastic. So if you have an environment, discussion in another language, not understood by many, fantastic, Jamaluddin. That's a very, very common one that I see in the workplace today. Aldini, no respect, discrimination, does not respect differences. Very good. Yeah, wonderful. And you're all spot on. So you see, these are things that sometimes, you know, like you said, when we are speaking in a language that is not common, there could be one person who doesn't, out of 10 of you, 9 of you understand, one doesn't understand. And we are not even conscious. We are not discriminate enough to take, what shall I say, to note that one person doesn't understand, but we just carry on because we say majority does, you know. And we don't even stop to recognize that, address that. And slowly, 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 what happens is that particular individual could be developing certain mental patterns, certain habits, certain judgments, you know, and that could affect the whole team, right? So just because one person, because of one person, that particular person can actually be the cause of disruption in the team. So it's very, very important. Yes, micromanagement, no respect, less respect. Yeah, fantastic. These are all examples of a negative working environment. So you notice these are all that you have mentioned has got to do with how we react to people. It's got to do with leadership. It's got to do with culture. It's got to do with the corporate language, for example, or the corporate culture in your organizations. It's not about the physical environment. It is more the intangible in our surrounding has to be dealt with. Otherwise, it can lead to physical and health problems. Now, look at the second situation. Depression and anxiety have a significant economic impact. And this was a statistic from May 2019. In US dollars, it's globally estimated 1 trillion US dollars accounts for loss of productivity that comes from depression and anxiety, right? So you go to work, but like somebody said, I think Jamaluddin said, you're a zombie. You are not really working with your full, heart and mind. You are depressed, you're anxious. You are not giving your 100%. You do because you're told to do, because somebody has told you that you have to stay back and finish it, right? You're doing it with anger. You're doing it with negative emotions, right? And that actually costs organizations more than a trillion US dollars. The third point, harassment and bullying at work are commonly reported problems, and this can give rise to a substantial adverse impact on mental health. Okay, so yeah. So harassment and bullying would be things like, an example could be somebody new joins your team, and because he's new, everyone dumps everything on him, you know, and because he's Gen Y and he is supposed to be more tech savvy or whatever, everything related to technology is dumped to him, and then he has to stay back, and he is so new to the team that he dare not even say that he has got appointments and engagements that he or a badminton match that he, you know, wanted to go back and play, but no one gave him that confidence to speak up, and he just stays there against his will, anxious and depressed, but completely having to stay there physically and completing that job. Yeah, so these are examples that can lead to mental health and very poor well-being in the workplace. So I just wanted to touch on that very briefly, that this is another stress or a stress point that can give rise to mental health and well-being challenges in our workplaces. Okay, so we're slowly winding down, and I wanted to say that in today's society, in today's environment, there are, you know, the stress medicine and society today, there are many elements, and I think this is continuing to increase. Workload is intensified, there is an increased need for productivity, and we know during the COVID times we've been hit economically. We can expect that we will be expected to work 3-4 times heavier due to the circumstances, and is definitely going to give rise to a lot of challenges for mental health and stress. Constant search for perfection. Now, as parents, sometimes we want, you know, our children to excel and to bring home, you know, top results all the time. So there's a lot of pressure for perfection. Obsession with competition. This happens at schools, it happens at work. Yeah, difficulty balancing work, personal and family life, major challenges and changes in values and social standards, right? So these are elements that today are causing so much more additional pressure, that we depend on external stimulation. We depend on addictions and, you know, medication and pills, and ADHD is such a huge example. And I feel personally that it is really a man-made disease, because this is one way big pharma makes its money. But children who are restless, who cannot settle down, you know, they're given drugs to suppress them so that you know, they are contained, and teachers find it easier to deal with them when they are drugged in a way, you know. There's a lot of this pressure that is happening, and I think we need to be very careful as leaders, as parents, and ourselves in our personal lives to really evaluate, do we, you know, do we be part of the bandwagon and everyone's going for the A's? Do we have to go for the A's all the time? You know, everyone's going for luxury items. Is that the only way to actualize ourselves? You know, do we really have to be in that rat race? Okay, so in conclusion, I'm going to want to leave you with a concept of the power of words, the language that we speak to ourselves. Okay, pressure is what presses us, right? And there are some certain things which are for sure going to press us, and we call it pressure. And that's what gives us stress. So the word pressure, relook that word pressure. And I'd like you also to look at the word listen. Silent. The word listen and the word silent are spelled using exactly the same words, right? L-I-S-T-E-N and S-I-L-E-N-T. So when you are in a pressure situation, just pause, take advantage of silence, and listen to what's happening in your body, listen to what's happening in your mind, listen to what your higher self is telling you. Because we have the power to convert that to pleasure, something that is going to please us. For sure, it is going to please us, right? So this is just some examples of the words and the meaning that we attach to certain words. I would also like to leave you with this example of the word abracadabra, and I'm sure we have all been through it. As we were children, we used to have this magic wand, and We used to manifest reality, dreaming up magic. We forget the power of this as we grow up. And the meaning of this word, abracadabra, is actually, my word is my creation. What you say to yourself can become your reality. Okay? It's a very old Hebrew definition. You can go back and Google that as well, right? So be careful of what you say, the words that we use. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to quickly take you back to our 2-day program. This was just a preview. I have covered a lot of what was listed in understanding stress. The second part is going to be about, and I'm glad that we are aligned, because this program is about our personal stresses. It's about personal life, and a majority of your stress actually comes from the stresses in our personal life. Okay, and then the third part is, of course, going back with a toolbox that can help you with skills in addressing our stress. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to our moderators. If you have any questions, let's take it on in the chat. Thank you so much.
All right,
and
thank you,
I hope
Amita.
to see you join us soon. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Amita. That was a really great presentation. I'm now going to pass this on to Yilin for the Q&A session. So if you have any questions, we just like to remind you to type them in the Q&A box, yep, Yilin will assist you with the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Isa. Thank you, Amita. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. We are now in the Q&A session. I have a question from Adeline in the Q&A box, and she's requesting for a copy of the presentation. Adeline, thank you. We will respond to you. We will share a live recording of this session for your reference and other tips that Amita might provide as part of the session today. Thank you very much. Anyone else, please do post your questions and comments in the Q&A box or in the chat box if that's more convenient. While we wait for your comments and questions, I have a question for Amita. How do we sustain purpose and stay motivated despite challenges and the perceived negativity surrounding the workplace, especially in this time that we're in?
Yeah, thank you for that question. In fact, yeah, that's a really very good question. And I think it's a good segue from some of the things that we spoke about just now. I believe it starts with how focused we are on having a life goal, a life plan. And, what do we go to work for? Are we just going just to guile time, or, are we just going just for the money, to pay bills? Is there a greater purpose behind why we do what we do? Because that really keeps us going. Times are going to be tough. Times are going to be tougher, and we need to recognize the reality of reaching those goals. Sometimes it will take time, it will take effort, it will take a lot of energy and a lot of sacrifices as well. So when we commit to the work and the effort and the investment that is needed to get there, I think a lot of our stresses, can be dealt with, and it can sustain us and keep us motivated. And maybe one last thing, this is truly something I personally believe, is not taking life so seriously. We can enjoy life, live in flow, be conscious, and believing in divine providence as well, right? That there is something bigger than us, larger than us. We are not here to suffer. We are here to do our part, and we will be, helped along the way. I feel there are forces that are there to take care of us. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yes, definitely. I think having purpose and staying on course with those purpose that we have,
yeah,
and believing that we are in it for the good in the long run, absolutely, I think helps us quite a bit there. Yeah. All right. I've got another question. So in relation to the workplace, in order to create a more conscious work environment around the issues of well-being and mental health, what are the essential changes required for the organization to go on that pathway?
Yeah, this is a question that may not be directly related to our topic. However, it is a great question, Yilin, in when we have organizations that are conscious, the whole work environment is actually quite different. And because the environment is different and the culture is different, people may not be as stressed, okay? Or even if they have that stress, it is managed very, very differently, right? Something that spurs us forward rather than gives us mental health issues or physical issues, okay? And I particularly love this topic about organizations becoming more conscious, because I think there are far and few, but there are wonderful examples of leaders. There's a band of leaders who are very different from traditional leaders. These are leaders, we call them the conscious leader. In fact, I have a book here by Gina Hayden. Okay, if you have a chance to read this, I would really love you to, pick this up. And these leaders actually deal with the organizations very differently. If somebody wants to leave the company, they actually support the people who are leaving if the purpose is to start social enterprises that benefit the bigger whole. So these are organizations who are not just interested in short-term profit only. They are organizations that are doing more than just having to be profiting. They make an impact to the world. They make an impact to society. They make an impact on, social conditions and communal conditions. They go beyond small-minded competition. They are more transparent, purpose and meaning is very, very clear, and it aligns with the employee's vision and purpose as well. And something very interesting I read in this book is the word human is no longer a resource. So it's not human resource, but human is a source, right? So the source of our business profitability and our communal profitability is actually our people. So humanity-centered leadership becomes number one. And I believe if we had that kind of organization, everybody is really raring to go, stress levels are dealt with very, very differently. Yeah, I hope we get there.
Thanks, Amita. Interestingly enough, I got an email today, and the person that's emailing me is not the head of the human resource department, but human relations. So that's a hopeful indication that things are changing out there in the corporate landscape.
Fantastic. That's nice to hear. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from Agnes. And Agnes is saying there are several tools covered in this program. Is there one that is regarded as a central or key to managing stress? And I think Agnes is looking for a key tip right here.
Okay.
Managing stress.
I think this is just my personal experience. I think if you can be a gardener of your mind, we have to be the gardener of our mind. I think that's the key single source of dealing with everything, whether it's personal, whether it's family, whether it's work. And I stress the word gardener because the job of the gardener is to remove the weeds, is to fertilize the plants, is to prune and all of that. So we have to be a custodian of our mind, how we think, how we feel, and if we can learn up as many skills as possible, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's, I don't know, journaling or being grateful every day, whatever it is, we have to be the gardener of our mind, I feel. I think that's the first step, I would say. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for that, Amita. Agnes, I hope that answers your question. Being the gardener of your mind, being in control of what you want to weed out, what you're going to keep in and beautify. Yes. All right. Yes. Okay. If there are no more questions, we will then be closing the session. And I'd like to take the opportunity to express our appreciation to Amita for a wonderful session. And it has been very enlightening for me. I am sure for most, if not all of our audience here today. So thank you, Amita.
Thank you,
ladies and gentlemen, thank you. And I'll hand the session back to Isa.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, and all the very best.
All right. Thank you, Yilin, and thank you, Amita, for the session today. Before we go, we would really appreciate if you could spend some time to give us some feedback. So I'll be launching the poll. So if you could just let us know if the webinar met your expectations, did it motivate you, and if you would consider signing up for a full program. We've got some feedback already. We really appreciate if everybody could give us your feedback. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact any of the numbers and the contact listed on your screen right now. If you would like to know more about the program that Amita mentioned. We've almost got everybody with the poll. I'm just going to leave it on for about a minute, and I'll be closing the poll, and that's it for today.